Alright guys, today I'm going to talk about what is probably one of my most favourable ways of fishing, of course, the good old fashioned float. Now what I'm going to talk about is different types of float, the situations I use them in, and variants of all different types of fishing for float fishing. Apart from, say, fly fishing, I think this is one of the most pleasurable and exciting ways to fish. It's watching that float just under the surface. So what I'll start off with is the traditional float, the one most people know and use, the straight, thick-bodied waggler. Now this is quite a heavy one. This is a 3AA. Great for fishing, say, on a reservoir or a large lake to give you that distance and casting. Also good for getting your bait down quick because you can dot your shot right down the line with it being so heavy. Get past those nuisance fish if you don't want to be catching, say, small roach or rudd that are feeding up near the surface or halfway down. Gets down to the bottom quicker the heavier the float if you dot your shot right. The other one that I'll go on to, because everyone knows a waggler, they know how to set them up, locking it in place with two shot or using a rubber or something, then shotting your float down the line. Then you get onto a bit more subtle, if you will, with the floats. The great old Canal grey. Now these are a very good, like, still water float. Don't want to use them when there's any flow, they're not designed for that. But on something like a canal or a still water commercial or short range fishing on it, maybe a lake or a loch or something, very, very good. This one takes up to 2 BB. Now myself, preferably, when I put these on, I like to use a float rubber. And what it is the float rubber goes on to the bottom here. And then on the end of that, there's a little, say, bayonet. And on the bayonet, there's a rubber sleeve. Take the rubber sleeve off, thread that on your line, and then put your bayonet into that rubber sleeve. And what it enables you to do a quick change if you need to. If your float isn't capable for the conditions or anything like that, you just pop out the bayonet, get another float with the bayonet on it, into the rubber sleeve. Brilliant if you're not sure about the depth where you're fishing, if it's a new lake, a new commercial, if you find that the fish aren't feeding where you want them to be, you want to change your float for that kind of tactic, very, very good. And the other float, to give a bit of a difference, is the antenna float. Now the antenna float, if you can see that there, has all those different colours on the stem, which is great if you're fishing fairly sensitive for fish on the bottom or just off the bottom. Weight your float down, you can set it for any of those colours on the antenna, so that it's perfect for getting a lift bite indication or subtle little indications on the downward, like that. Very, very sensitive float, very, very good. Don't really normally get these kind of tips as thin as this on anything heavier than, say, a 1AA. This is maybe a 2AA, let's say, for deference. But that is a killer float if you're fishing for things like crucians, roach, rudd, even bream if they're a bit finicky. But yeah, top float. Now we'll come to one of my favourite floats of all time. Very hard to get hold of now. I don't even think they make them anymore. And that is the billy making Stillwater Blue. Now the Stillwater Blue, they're very, very sensitive floats. Very, very nicely weighted bodies to them as well. Great for casting like short range or getting under little trees on canals or very, very, very slow moving rivers or streams, if you will. Very, very light as well. I mean, this only takes 2 number 4s, but so sensitive. I've used these umpteen times on canals and commercials, and they literally are beautiful floats to use. Very, very good indication. If you can get them on the internet, if you can find them on eBay or anything like that, search them out. They are one of the best in the world. The other one is the traditional crystal waggler. Now these are exceptionally good on waters where, say, the water clarity is a bit clear. You don't want to spook the fish if you're fishing short range, fishing margins, anything like that, where you're fishing very shallow, because of course, being crystal, blend in when they go in the water, so this bit becomes invisible to fish, or as best as. Nice high visibility, they're very cheap, very easy to find, everywhere sells them. Go in a range of weights, anything from a few number 4s or BBs all the way up to 4 or 5 AAs, you know, bigger sizes, bigger floats. Very, very good. Very, very good float. I use them occasionally. I'm not a massive user of these. I don't know why. I just never took to them. I think what it is, because they are a plastic float, I find they warp if they get hot. They can get condensation in them, and all it takes is a pinprick in the body, and they take on water, and that alters the weight. And once the weight's altered in it, you can't get a decent setup on it for your, you know, your indication or anything like that. But still a very good float. Then we come to a specialised float. I found these, a bloke was making them on a marketplace. I think it was in Dorset, and he was making quill floats. That's them. They are very, very, very sensitive floats. An excellent float to use on the canal. Now you can see it's got a curve in it, but that's simply because of the quill. Now this takes 0.1 of a gram, which is, you know, a couple of number 6s if that. Very, very good for very sensitive fishing, especially on canals again, or short range still water commercials. Preferably when I use these kind of floats, I lock them in place with float stops, rubber float stops, so there's no weight around the float whatsoever. And then literally I may have a shot about 3/4 of the way down my line to the hook length, and then just on the hook length or just before it, a dust shot of about say a number 8 or a number 10, something like that. Very, very good if you're fishing on the likes of Bude Canal, where the bites are sensitive there. They can be finicky, or if you're fishing a commercial for crusions and things like that, again, very sensitive bites. Excellent to use with the likes of hemp tears, wheat, small pulses if you can use them as bait, or very, very small soft hooker pellets as well if you're finding that's what they're taking. Use very fine hook lengths, very small hooks, something like an 18 to a 22 or even a 24. That's what I'd use this float for. Very, very good float. I bought, must have been about half a dozen of them off this bloke when I saw them, because I thought that's perfect for what I want to use. As small as they are and as fine as they are, on a water that's got a little bit of colour in the water, like a bit of brown in it or a green tinge to it, you will see these. You'll see these up to 20 yards away, easy. But yeah, a top float. If you ever see a bloke making these out of quill, very, very good. Now, I did have them. I can't find them, believe it or not. I used to make some floats up myself out of balsa wood. Now, if you can get to a modelling shop that does, you know, like train models or making your own sets and things like that, they used to sell not cubes, but like rectangles of balsa wood, all different sizes. Now I used to buy these, take them home, sand them down to the shape and size that I wanted, whip an eye onto the bottom if you want to whip an eye, or just leave them as a stick. And brilliant. Make your own balsa floats up, test them in a bowl of water to see what weight you can take on them. You can pair them as fine as you want to pair them. Just paint them up with some acrylic paints and things like that. I used to use some Day-Glow nail varnish for the tips because it was fantastic for vision. And you can just make up your own float for your own weight. Balsa floats, brilliant floats, highly buoyant. Once you've done them, the cheapest chips to make. It costs maybe £2 or £3 it used to for a long stick of balsa wood, and you'd make 3 or 4 floats out of one stick. Cheap, effective, and it worked. It was great. Now we'll come on to a bit more specialised now on the floats, and what I've got here, our first one I'll show you, is the loaded waggler. Now a loaded waggler like this is very good for getting distance but still fishing fine. So most of your weight is already built into the float. Put this on and it'll probably sit about there in the water. So all you have to do is dust shot it, you know, a few couple of number 6s or number 8s or something, just to get that little bit of sensitivity, and plant your bait on the deck if you want to plant it on the deck. They're exceptionally good if you want a bit more distance without fishing too heavy with shot, or if you're fishing shallow as well. Good float. Use it a few places down here. There's not many commercials I use loaded wagglers on, to be honest, but they do have their preference here and there. Then you've got, for your carp anglers amongst you, pellet waggler. Pellet wagglers are normally very heavily weighted themselves, again like a loaded waggler, but they are designed for basically sticking on your line, locking it in place with a couple of those rubbers, those things, and free lining down to a pellet. No shot on your line at all, really, or at least I don't anyway. If you're getting them going on the pellet waggler, you've got to be feeding. You've got to keep feed going in, constantly putting in pellets all the time, probably fishing maybe a foot to a foot and a half under the surface, not really much more, because the carp will come up, muller those pellets as they're going in. Plant that on top of them, they hear the plop from this because they're designed to make a simulated sound of pellets going in when they hit the water. Very, very effective. I've seen many matches won for bagging up on carp of anything from £2 to a few ounces all the way up to double figure carp, up to £20 I've seen caught on these things. Stafford Moor have seen this win umpteen matches when I've been up there fishing. Very, very good for doing your commercial carp fishing. You've got, of course, for your carp anglers amongst you, controller floats. Controller floats are really good. You know, slide that on your line with its little eye there. Put a bead and a stopper, either whether it's a small light swivel or just a link bead or anything like that. Put that on, up and down your line for as far away from your hook length as you want. Great for using surface baits like dog biscuit, bread, or anything else that floats. I've even caught on ginger nut biscuits using this. Little trick for you, that. Try keeping it on the hook before it dissolves. That's the trick. And then last but not least, one of my favourite things to do when I'm fishing is pike fishing with a float. And that is the good old-fashioned cork bung. Now, I don't know what it is. Maybe I'm nostalgic. It's the first sort of bungs I used as a kid for pike fishing with my dad. They're so easy and quick to change the depth if you need to. Because it's literally, they have a little slit built into the side of them and a stick. So all you do is you pull the stick out, slide that slit onto your line, put it whatever depth you want it at, and then lock it in place with the stick. And they're very loose. But they are brilliant for just doing quick and easy pike fishing when you're dead baiting. Absolutely brilliant. And then, of course, if you're dead baiting and you want to take the float off to do a bit of wobbling or sink and draw or something, it's dead easy. You just take the stick out, take the float off your line. Done. Absolutely brilliant. I've had this bung here, as you can see, it's a bit weather beaten and battered now. I've had that for the best part of, I'm going to say, nearly 30 years or more. One I used on the locks in Ireland, catching many pike. I've got 3 or 4 of these, and I prefer to use these over those thick plastic buoyant pike floats that they use. I don't know, I don't like them. It's not for any reason. They do the job and everything, but that's just nostalgia right there. And a good way of using something that's as visually striking as this and cheap to make, that I've got plenty of, that's hidden in my shed somewhere, Kinder Surprise. Get a Kinder Surprise, the plastic thing that the toy comes in, that little capsule, seal it where you normally crack it open to take the toy out, seal it, but before you seal it, drill a hole in one end, pass a swivel into it with a bit of line and tie a knot, so that you've got literally swivel, line, knot on the inside of your Kinder Surprise thing, and just put a bit of silicone on it. And then you've got another running float that you can set at any depth. Very visual because it's very buoyant. It's yellow or orange plastic, whatever they come in now. I've made dozens of them up over the years for doing a bit of pike fishing. Absolutely brilliant. And they're very good as well for jetty fishing on a pier or out for sea fishing, for whether it be garfish or rat or anything like that near the rocks on a pier. Brilliant. Cheap, effective. You don't care if you lose them. If you lose them, pop down the shop, buy a Kinder Surprise. You get chocolate as well. Make another one up. Yay. But that is just a short selection of different variety of floats you can use on commercials and still waters around here. I've not got any river floats with me because where I live there ain't no rivers to go fish really. You've got to travel miles, so I don't have a big selection of rivers. There's maybe 1 or 2 you might be able to put a stick float down or a bolo or something like that and do a bit of strep pegging. But you just make do with what you've got around you. So there you go, lads. The good old waggler, whether it be commercials, locks, lakes, reservoirs, all your selections is all you need. Just look at the weights, learn your weights. That's one thing I will say to any aspiring angler who wants to take up float fishing, is learn your shots and learn how to shot a float. All floats tell you what they take, whether it says 3AA, 2 number 4s, 3 number 6s, anything like that. Don't just lock the float in place with the weight that it says. Learn how to shot it. You know, if it says 3AA, don't just bung 3AA around the float and then nothing down your line. It might catch you a few fish, but I guarantee you, learn how to shot your float evenly, locking it in place with a, say, 2 AAs if it's a 3 AA float, and then using that other AA as dotted shots. So you've got, say, 2 number 1s, number 4, number 6, number 8. Down your line, you'll shot your line out, it'll cast straighter, it'll hit the water more balanced, you won't get as many tangles, and it'll be much more sensitive for seeing your bites, indication, and for striking into the fish. If you've got a load of weight around the base of your float, when you strike, that's what you're hitting into more than the fish. You'll bump off a lot of fish, and you'll lose a lot more as well. So anyone who's learning float fishing, look at your floats, figure out the floats you want to use for your lakes that you're on, but learn how to shot a float for whatever situation. If you're going to fish it on the drop, if you're going to fish it on the deck, if you're going to even float ledger, if you're going to slide a float, if you're anything like that, just see what way to shot it. You know, there's plenty of videos on YouTube, there's plenty of books and tutorials telling you how to differentiate the grammage of a shot, how to break it down, because every shot is worth a certain weight. Dot them down. I always dot down my floats when I'm fishing. Sometimes I'll use what they call a shirt button pattern, so it's evenly spaced shotting all the way down the line. Sometimes I'll bulk shot it down near the bottom, and then just a hook length to indication. There's many, many ways. I'm not saying what I do is always the best way. There's always some other way. So learn it. You'll find it'll make a very big difference in your indication, getting bites, and then catching fish. It works wonders the more you learn. It really does. So that's that one for today, lads. Thank you, and I'll see you again soon.